Hi, I'm Samantha, and I'm here at the Stitchin Post today, and I am going to show you how we made the stockings for our group of Advent stockings. So you can see I've completed 23 of them here, and this is our last one. And I did them all this way, so I cut them all at once and then grouped everything together so that I could sit down and just batch sew them. And so you'll want to cut each of your stockings. You've got 6 in each color. And then for each stocking, you want 8 inches of trim, whichever kind of trim you want. We've got 2 with this stocking. And then you need a piece of the wool fabric that you've cut from your scraps that is 1/2 inch by 4 inches. And that's going to be our loop hanger. And after I cut them all and decided, how I wanted each one to look, I just use these little clips to group them together so that they all stay together and it's nice and easy for me to sew. Okay, so now we're going to sew them. So one thing to note is you want to make sure that if you look at your orientation that they're going to be facing the same way so that you sew your trim on the right side of your fabric so that you don't end up with, them facing multiple directions. Okay, so that's this direction for us. So I'm going to open it up like this because we're going to have trim on both sides. I'm going to move it over to my sewing machine. Okay, I'm just going to eyeball this. So it's about 1/4 inch from the top. If you are nervous about doing that kind of thing, then feel free to mark it and line your ribbon up. All right, here we go. And I'm using clear thread in the top so that I don't have to keep changing my thread for all of these different ribbon colors, and you won't see it. All right. So I'm just going to pause for a minute and again check my orientation to make sure it's going to be on the outside. You don't want to ask me how I figured that out. And now I'm going to sew the second piece on. Okay. And now I'm just going to come back and sew the other side of this ribbon. So with the wider grograins, I did sew it on both sides of the ribbon. Let's see if I can line that up. And you'll see in a minute here with the rickrack, we're just going to sew it straight down the middle. All right. And now, again, I'm just going to eyeball it, and you can place it wherever you like. I kind of like it toward the top, and so you can barely see my line of stitching there. And so that's what I do to kind of keep it in line, is just line it up so the top of those bumps are coming along that stitching. But again, if you feel more comfortable, you can pin it. You could even glue stick it down and then sew over it, whatever makes you comfortable. And I'm sewing right down the middle of the rickrack, or as close to that as I can get. Just go nice and slow. It's pretty skinny. Oops, that's getting off a little bit, but let's see. I think I'm going to have to take that out. That happens. No worries. We'll just pull that up a little bit and sew it back down. These scissors are so sharp, I don't want to cut my ribbon underneath. All right, there we go. No worries. Now it's lined up. Oh, well. or not. done. Okay, so we've got our trim sewn all the way across both sides of our stocking. And now all we're going to do is use our scissors and trim off the edges. So I think it's easier to do from the back so I can follow the shape of my stocking and trim. And you can see that I used white thread in the bobbin because the clear thread sometimes is a little bit hard in a bobbin depending on your machine. But you can use it. Either way will work. All right, so get these cleaned up. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to put both sides of our stocking together with the right sides facing out. And what I do is line up the tops, get that nice and straight, and then I just use one of these clips and hold the top together so I know it's lined up. And then take your strip that you've cut, and again that's a 1/2 inch by 4 inches, and I'm going to place it in the corner here towards the top, at the angle that I want. And then I use a second clip to hold that in there. Okay, and then that's all the pinning that I do. You can add more if you're more comfortable, but it's pretty easy. They stay together, so I don't really think you need it. All right, and then you want to sew about 1/4 inch in all the way around because we're going to need room to trim with our pinking shears when we're done. Okay. All right, here we go. And okay, this is not my machine. How do I back tack? Here? Okay. There we go. So I just back tack a little bit because if you put something wide in there, you want to make sure you've got a good strong seam at the top so that they don't pop open. Right, and I'm just going to go slow and follow that around the curve. And I find I don't really need to stop and swivel if I just go nice and slow. I got a little close there. That's okay though. Right, and as you come up to this part, just make sure that you've got your ribbon so that it doesn't catch any edges and get pushed up. You want to make sure it stays nice and flat. I'm going to remove that clip and just hold it down with my finger. And then I'm going to back tack really well here because this is my hanger. I'm going to go over that a couple times. All right, now we're done with the sewing part. Going to just trim off any threads. Remove our clips. So you should pay attention because this is the first one I've sewn with white thread in the bobbin. So I now have white thread on the back. I still think that looks okay, but the rest of them have clear thread. So if that matters to you, think about that, because obviously I hadn't before. All right, so the last step is just going to be to use some pinking shears to trim your sock. You can try using a rotary cutter blade as well, but the curves can make it a little difficult. So just get a nice sharp pair, and you see once I've done a cut, then I'm going to go in and line up those back teeth with the one that I cut before and cut some more so that it stays nice and even all the way around. And then be careful not to cut your seam. This part is probably the hardest to keep it all lined up, but it's pretty forgiving if you just go back. There we go. And you can do a couple different things when you get up to the ribbon. You can just stop and leave the ribbon trim not pinked, or you can do this. Pull it apart with your fingers and then trim one side at a time. And it is really hard to get through that ribbon. So you're not going to be able to do it two sides. And then just flip it over and do the back side with the ribbon. And it may not line up, but it's good enough. All right, now I'm going to come back here and finish this other side. And when you get up to the top, if you're going to cut through the ribbon with the pinking shears, just be really careful that you don't get your hanger. Just hold it over with your finger and do each side separately again. Oops, gets harder when they're smaller. All right, there we go. And we have our set of 24 stockings. You can put, candy canes in these for your kids. You can put dog biscuits for your dog. Little treats for anybody in the family. I love Advent calendars, and we have, I think, 7 of them at home. And so some of them I even put little riddles or jokes in. It doesn't have to be anything big, but it's just a fun little thing to open every day. So I hope you liked our project, and thanks for watching.